consenting for your name, the content of what you say and your image to be broadcast and stored to the council website. If any member, officer or member of the public addressing the committee has concerns with this, please contact the committee services officer immediately. For those at home viewing the webcast, I would like to inform you that if you look above the video, you will see a resources tab. Select this and a link to the agenda will appear in the right-hand side. This will allow you to open the agenda in PDF form and follow the discussion and debate. Okay, so the next agenda item is apologies, and Councillor Jeff Green has sent his apologies. Councillor Cameron, you're deputising. Thank you. Okay, next up is Members' Code of Conduct. So I'm going to ask members whether or not you have any disclosable pecuniary interest and or any other relevant interest in connection with any items on this agenda. If so, to declare them and state the nature of the interest. No? Okay. Next agenda item is public and member questions. I haven't received any public questions. No statements or petitions have been received, and no questions by members have been received. So we move on to agenda item 5, which is application for transition funding. That's pages 1 to 8 in your agenda pack. And Chair, you're going to talk us through the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. The report is to note a request for transition funding from Wirral Evolutions to support their ability to remain within the current and future contract price commissioned by the Council of 5.015 million. Since the company has been trading, it's not been able to remain within the commission contract price and has requested additional financial support every year from the Council on an annual basis. And the Council has provided support to the company and has found this from its own budgets. This year, it was agreed at full council in March that a saving of £500,000 will be found by not providing this support to the company from this year and from every year on from 21-22. And it has requested the company to only manage to contain its spend within the contract level. Since the saving was proposed and agreed by full council, a project group was established to support the company with the options for Wirral Evolutions to reduce its expenditure or increase its income in readiness to be able to achieve the saving for this year and not draw on additional funds from the council. The company, as a result of this, has made plans to stay within the current contract sum for this year, and this has involved a restructure of the business resulting in savings regarding workforce and premises savings as well, so rental savings. However, in order for the full 500,000 saving to be made this year, the workforce savings needed to be in place from April, and the premises that were due to be vacated needed to have been vacated already within the current year. This has not currently happened, and as a result, the staffing structure has been placed on hold, and as I said, the planned exit of some of the premises have not actually happened, and this is pending a report back to the Adult Care and Health Committee in the autumn. As a result of these three things, which is specified in the report summary, so the transitional impact of the changes, as I said, to the locations already implemented. There has been some change in rent costs as well, so there's been some additional rental increases incurred by the company from the council as the existing contract of lease on buildings has expired, so a new contract has been implemented, and that has resulted in some rent increases. And there's also been a forecast loss of income due to the activities associated with the catering and income generating activities as a result of COVID-19. As a result of this, the savings won't be fully achieved for this year, and the company have requested the transition funding for this. As the savings are held within the Adult Care and Health Committee, and the commissioning of the contract is the responsibility and the accountability of the Adult Care and Health Committee, the request for transition funding is a decision for that committee to agree. So therefore, the report today, Chair, is for the board for this morning is to note and for any observations to be made that could be provided back to the committee in agreeing that recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll take questions or comments from members. Councillor Cameron?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I just wanted clarification. This, I assume, when it goes to committee and is agreed, will be met within the whole round of that particular committee's budget or from reserves. It's not something that would go into any capitalisation directive, is it?
Thank you, through you, Chair. No, Councillor Cameron, yeah, it will, because it's not a specifically COVID-related pressure, it will have to be met from other areas within the committee's budget. There is the social care grant that the committee is holding in reserve for any additional costs as a result of adult social care pressures this year, so it will be met from the social care grant.
Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Chair. It's more of a comment really than a question. So, in reality, what this company is asking for is that this is to come back to the Adults Committee, which is the committee that's asked it to work within its contract price, and to say we're not going to do that, we actually want some additional funding. So that clearly is a decision for that committee. I think it's unfortunate that the only approach that this company seems to believe is possible is to come back to the council, as opposed to behaving like any other company would and looking for alternative sources of funding commercially, rather than continually coming back to the council. That will be my only comment, and the matter will obviously be resolved one way or another by the committee. But thank you for the report, Chair. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Councillor Nolan, I didn't catch everything that you were saying there. So are you saying it's not a matter for the Adult Care and Health Committee, it needs to come back to full council?
No, it's a matter for the committee. What I'm saying is I think it's unfortunate that this company views that the only way that it can deal with any financial shortfall is to come back to the council, rather than to look at alternative sources of funding as any other company would if it views itself as a commercial operation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm happy to move those recommendations, that it's noted by the shareholder board and it's a matter of a decision by the adult committee.
Okay, thank you. As we're the only members here, there's no more questions or comments. Yeah, so that's on record. Then Councillor Nolan is also chair of the committee that this will be going back to. It's an expression of disappointment, really, that not only will the savings not be achieved that were set out for Wirral Evolutions, but there's an additional ask of the council in order to help them try and achieve those savings. So that's noted. Thank you. So you've moved. I'm happy to second that. Yeah. Can we agree that by assent? Yeah. So we're basically agreeing the recommendations with the amendment from Councillor Nolan. Thank you. We will move on to the next agenda item, which is an application for deferral or traded service and pension strain cost payments. And again, Chair, that's for you to present.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, similar to the previous report, really, the recommendations in this report is to for the shareholder board to note the request from the company in terms to defer the payment of buyback costs and pension strain, and again to forward this on any comments or observations to the Adult Care and Health Committee when it's actually deferred there in the autumn. Each year the Council does invoice Wirral Evolutions for services this is provided to them via a buyback for support services from the Council. So when the Wirral Evolutions was established, there was an agreement that the company would buy back services, specific services from the Council, for example HR, finance, generally support services. And also there was some ongoing pension strain costs relating to previous employees that there was an agreement that the company Wirral Evolutions would pay for as well. So on an annual basis, the Council does invoice Wirral Evolutions for these costs, and up until 2019-20, all the invoices were paid and there was no outstanding balance. However, the situation that Wirral Evolutions finds itself in at the moment, it's not able to pay the invoice for last year, which is 2021, for both the pension strain costs and the buyback. And apologies to members of the board, but these figures are not in the report and should have been included within the report. So the actual amounts that we're talking about here is the cost of the buyback services, the annual cost of buyback that's levied on Wirral Evolutions is just over 550,000, and the annual cost of the pension strain costs is just over 330,000. So just under 900,000 altogether. As I said just previously, as yet the company has not paid the invoice that the council has issued for these two services, and as a result, if the company was to pay it, it would impact on cash flow for Wirral Evolutions, and without taking any alternative action, this would result in it not being able to pay its staff or its suppliers when it comes to November. The company have not specified when they want the payment to be deferred to, and they have said that it would be outcome on the decision of the referral back to the Adult Care and Health Committee. In the cash flow forecast that is in your agenda pack, excuse me, Wirral Evolutions have made provision to pay the buyback costs and the pension strains for this year, for 21-22, sorry. So the matter that they are actually deferring or asking for deferment is last year's invoice, and that's for it not to be paid as yet, and for it to be paid when the company are in a position to be able to rectify its cash flow. So as I said at the start, Chair, the recommendations for noting and for referring back to the Adult Care and Health Committee with any observations that the shareholder board might have. Thank you.
So could I just clarify before I go to members then, where would that, so in effect that would be the council not recouping nearly £1 million. So where's that going to come from?
Yes, Chair. So the council has invoiced Wirral Evolutions for those services. So when an invoice is actually raised, the income is already recorded in the council's accounts. So and the council's accounts have been closed for last year. So it's assuming that that invoice would be paid. If the invoice doesn't get paid, so if it's put on hold, there's no immediate issue for the council. If the invoice doesn't get paid at all, it would have to be written off, and then that would have to be written back into the council's accounts, and that would result in a deficit then of 900,000 at that time.
And there's no end date here though, there's no date at which we're expected to have this money if we do get it, given there's clear problems with this company. And so it's a real risk, particularly the situation we're in terms of capitalisation. We could have £1 million hole in our finances.
Yes, Chair. If the company's not able to pay the invoice at all, yeah, and if it's written off, then that would result in a pressure on the council of almost £1 million, yes.
Thank you. Does anyone else have question or comments? Councillor Cameron.
Hi, thanks. So you mentioned that the pension strain costs refer to even prior, so obviously this looks like a prior year adjustment on the face of it, but the pension strain costs refer to even earlier than that. So I assume it doesn't relate to the EVR programme that I'm reading about in these papers. It must be prior to that even. So when were the pension strain costs, when we were aware of these and that arrangement, and were they met previously? Is this just the exceptional year? And then also, cash flow is always difficult if there's a feeling they can cover this year's, but it's also on top of last year's. That creates a huge crunch period, whatever that is, if it's a financial year, a quarter, however that is, that creates a big crunch. Do you have any confidence that that cash flow forecast could be met?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So, yeah, Councillor Cameron, the pension strain does relate to previous pension costs. The pension strain costs have been applied since the company was established, and they have been paid up until 2019-20. So it is only last year's pension strain payments that are outstanding. The company have said if they are able to receive the transition funding and implement the restructure to exit the premises and implement all of the activities that they have in their business plan, that they will be able to get back on a sound footing within the next 5 years and will be in a surplus position at that time. So from the figures they've provided, It does look as if there wouldn't be an issue if everything goes according to plan within their business plan, and they can recoup and make all the changes that they have to achieve their savings. So in that case, it might take a little bit longer for the invoice to be paid, and it could be paid on an instalment basis. But judging by the figures they've provided within their business plan, as I say, based on the plans that they have in terms of their restructuring and their exit of the premises, it does look as if they will be able to pay that invoice in future years. Yeah.
Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Chair. So you said there over the next 5 years. So are we looking at a company that is actually a viable company? When we're looking at over £1 million we're being requested to provide to keep this company afloat effectively. So are we actually looking at a viable company?
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. I guess it's a decision for the Adult Care and Health Committee, potentially, for members to make as to whether they think the company is viable. The figures the company have provided do indicate that they would get into surplus and they would be a sustainable company going forward. This is predicated on a number of things which are included in the business plan, which is also on the agenda. And this includes things like exiting some of the properties, changing the way that they provide their services, more improved services, modernising the services, and also a different type of workforce. So it depends on members' appetite, I would say, to agree those things and to let the company be able to carry on with those things. I mean, if members were not happy and that they didn't want to agree the things in the business plan and some of the plans that the company have put forward, then we would have to consider whether the company would be viable going forward based on the same services and terms and conditions and operation that it would be operating if it was exactly the same as a company that was in the council. So there would be a question to ask then as to why is it a separate company if everything is operating exactly as it would be if it was in the council. I think that is definitely a reasonable question to ask.
Councillor Cameron.
Sorry, just to clarify, this particular recommendation is around cash flow. Cash flow isn't really a strong indicator of underlying viability, is it? Everything else you've just described is a much stronger indication of a viable business, and cash flow is just that working capital, that day-to-day operation issue. I don't think we judge a company's ability on its cash flow, particularly after such a strange set of circumstances last year.
Yeah, no, I agree. And also you seem to have offered some reassurance around the ability for this company to pay this money back to the council, perhaps over a 5-year period. But again, yeah, it's for the relevant committee to actually discuss and decide. So if everyone's spoken, can we agree the recommendations by assent? I'm happy to move them. Do I have a seconder? Someone needs to second. Councillor Nolan, thank you. Are we happy to agree by assent? Thank you. Let's move on to the next item. Presentation of draft annual plan for 2021-22 for approval. Vicky, you're going to present the report. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, members. When the company was established, when Wirral Evolutions was established as a company by the council in 2015, a shareholder agreement was put in place which sets out how the council and the company have agreed to manage the affairs of the company. And under the shareholder agreement, the company is required to produce an annual business plan to the council for approval. Unfortunately, last year, as everyone is well aware, we were affected by the pandemic, and the process for approving the annual business plan was interrupted due to the COVID situation and the rapidly changing backdrop for service delivery, and therefore it became impracticable to produce a meaningful annual business plan. So the first recommendation in this report is that members waive the obligation on the company to submit a final annual business plan for 2020-2021. The second recommendation relates to the approval of the annual business plan for this year, 21-22. And Jean Stevens, the Managing Director of Wirral Evolutions, is here this morning, and I'd like to invite Jean to briefly talk members through the annual business plan, which is contained in your reports for this agenda item. So I'll hand over to Jean.
Thank you, Vicky. As Vicky's just introduced the annual business plan, I've assumed that members have had the opportunity to read in detail, and in doing so, I'll just highlight the following. This is the third annual business plan that the company has produced and submitted to the shareholder board for approval. But as Vicky's mentioned, unfortunately, 2020-21 was significantly impacted upon due to the COVID pandemic. And as we enter into 21-22, where we are today. In terms of the governance process to do with the shareholder agreement, that's where it's been particularly impacted upon. But this draft annual plan has a clear line of sight and underpins the company's 5-year strategic framework, business strategy, and supports and underpins the Wirral strategy, which has been scrutinised by council officers, providing positive feedback before today. It also provides a clear set of deliverable objectives detailed on pages 29 to 32, with each outcome supported by a comprehensive performance framework which reports qualitative and quantitative metrics quarterly to the company's board of directors, who provide oversight, challenge and compliance. The business plan also provides financial information on page 38, but points I would like to note is that since the new leadership has been put in place, the losses on the balance sheet have been addressed successfully, whilst consistently delivering a high quality and safe service for people with a learning disability across Wirral. The forecasted growth in the new business outside of the current commission contract will be driven by new ways of working, a dedicated capacity, which will have an improved structure with innovation, competitiveness, market positioning, and enable greater sustainability. We've heard previously in other reports that the company has made great steps to operate within the contract price. That means a different way of working, a different restructure, looking at different outcomes for people with learning disabilities. The company was confident and could operate within the contract price for this year, but unfortunately changes and actions outside the company's control has paused that implementation and has had an impact on the savings option that was provided. The growth is also on the back of a recovery year. We've all recognised that the pandemic has had a huge impact on every organisation. But the company, as I've said, rose to the challenge and could operate within the contract price. Also within the business plan is identified assumptions, risks and mitigating factors which are detailed on page 41 and 42. These will impact upon the successful delivery of the annual business plan. And points to note to the members is these factors include the continual impact of COVID restrictions, which is having an impact on everybody, the pausing of the implementation of the savings proposal, the restructure, exiting of certain locations, and the modernisation programme will all impact on the financial challenge. The uncertainty of a long-term commission contract also has an impact on the long-term viability. Mostly, the most important aspect for me is about the pace of change. The challenge for the company was effective from the 1st of April, after full Cabinet approved the savings. The company has operated everything within its powers to make those changes in a consultative, engaging manner, and was on target to implement a successful change programme. But unfortunately that has been paused, but the pace of change was on the offset, quite an unrealistic pace of change for the company. In conclusion, 2021, as I've said, has been an unprecedented year. But it's, as you'll see in the next report, which I'll say that a lot of the stuff has been successful as a result of COVID. Our response will continue to be exceptional, placing people we support at the heart of everything that we do, which is illustrated on 26 of the business plan. We were proud to open our services when many of them remain closed. I'd like to thank you for listening, and if any members of this committee would like to ask any questions before asking you to approve the annual business plan for 2021-22. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Jean, and thanks for coming along today to present that to us in person. Do you have any questions or comments from members? No, you got off lightly, so I'm just going to move that we agree the recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Thank you.
Okay, so agenda item 8 is the presentation of the annual report. Vicky, you're going to present this. Thank you.
Yes, Chair, as I explained in my introduction to the previous report, there is a shareholder agreement in place between Wirral Evolutions and the Council as the shareholder, and there is a requirement under that agreement for the company to produce an annual report. The annual report enables the company to demonstrate the activities and performance of the company for the previous year, and it enables the Council as the shareholder to monitor the performance and effectiveness of the company against the annual plan. The recommendation in this report is that the shareholder board is recommended to note the annual report for 2020-21 presented by Wirral Evolutions in compliance with the requirements of the shareholder agreement. And again, I'm going to ask Jean Stevens if she'd like to briefly talk you through the annual report.
Thank you, Vicky. Okay. Again, as per the previous report, I'll make an assumption that members have read in detail the annual report presented by Wirral Evolutions. The annual report for 2020-21 demonstrates activities, metrics and performance of the company in that year. It provides strong internal governance, guiding principles, values, strategies of the company. It identifies the principal challenge that the company has faced and how it's responded to it. It showcases delivery and outcomes against the business plan for that year, although it was significantly impacted upon because of COVID. It provides financial statements, budget versus actual income over expenditure for the year, and it also sets out strategic priorities for the forthcoming year, which again is clearly aligned to its 5-year strategy for the company. In terms of the annual report, I'd like to just highlight a couple of areas within the document. Again, this is on a backdrop of an unprecedented year operating frontline services for the most vulnerable adults with learning disabilities in an unknown pandemic. In 2020-21, we made 6,695 welfare calls were provided to the people we support, their parents, by our dedicated workforce using a mixed variety of communication methods. We provided nearly 4,000 hours of staff training delivered using digital technology with an 89% satisfaction rate by our workforce. 78% of our workforce reported a good to excellence regarding the company's response to the COVID pandemic. Over 70,000 hours of essential enrichment hours activities were provided in centre during the pandemic for the most vulnerable adults. We also witnessed a successful achievement in 8 people with a learning disability achieved successfully the Open Award qualification as part of our Supported Pathways programme, enabling their journey to become more independent within the community. This is illustrated on page 72 of the report, and the full impact report of our Supported Pathways has shown that 3 individuals have gained employment, 4 individuals gained volunteering in the community, 15 individuals produced their own CVs, 4 staff have been qualified in assessors of the Open Awards. But what's more important for me is that there's been a significant improvement in the individual's well-being, between 15 and 50%, enabling those individuals to tackle everyday opportunities and challenges ahead. And a combined increase in 25% in confidence and levels of independency after the programme has been completed. This has been validated by a national survey, the Short Warwick Edinburgh Mental Wellbeing Scale. So it's industry validated in terms of those improvements. But for me, all of that on the backdrop of a global pandemic is such an achievement. To complement the metrics, this report also contains a rich set of case studies that I do urge members to take the opportunity to read again if you get the chance. It really demonstrates the difference made for the people and the families that we support. In particular, I'd like to draw your attention to page 69, BL's case study. This individual had not been visited a GP since the age of 4 and was invited for a COVID vaccination. Both mum and the individual were exceptionally worried and had severe anxiety about the situation. Through the steps that the workforce supported this individual with easy read communication, document, explaining what was happening, staff engagement. This individual attended the GP, received their vaccination, and has now become a role model to other people with a learning disability, supporting them through the vaccination process. On the face of it, it really doesn't sound that grand, but I can assure you that was a massive difference for that individual who's not been to the GP since they were age of 4, their mum, their family members, and at the end of the day, we all know how the vaccine can support, the future well-being of individuals. So I'd just really like to note that one particularly. The second case study that I'd like to note is on page 77, No Child Goes Hungry. Members will be aware of the national campaign. The people that we support, those people with a learning disability, wanted to help other people, young people that were less fortunate for them. We worked together in partnership to provide and support the lunches to those vulnerable young people across Wirral. And for me, that again is something to note, that the people that we support put other people ahead of those, and a great partnership was working there. To conclude, our final board meeting of 2020, we held a virtual stakeholder session to reflect the silver lining in a difficult year. This provided valuable feedback, strengthened character despite the pandemic. These examples are listed on page 78 of the report, but I'd just like to leave you with a couple of meaningful quotes. Firstly, from a member of staff, the people we support are our greatest asset. Their personal outcomes and safety have been at the forefront, and we should be proud of what we've achieved this year. Quote from a parent carer, "You are proving every day what a great provider Wirral Evolutions is. Thank you so much to you and your staff." Quote from our Commissioner, the Council Commissioner, "Great valued work with positive outcomes. Really appreciate the hard work Wirral Evolutions has done and efforts to reshaping the service during this pandemic, supporting all that is required and more importantly, keeping everyone safe and well." And last but not least, a quote from one of the people that we support. "I'm so glad to be back in the centre as I miss my friends. I hope the centre doesn't close with the pandemic again, but I now understand the guidance that we have to follow." I'd like to thank you for listening, and my ask for this committee is to note the annual report tabled today by Wirral Evolutions in compliance with the shareholder agreement. If there's any questions, Chair.
Thanks for that. And, I just want to say that it does make it's a good read and it's user-friendly as well, which always helps when you've got sort of lengthy documents to read. So thank you for that. Do we have any comments or questions? Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the report. It is, very readable. I had to read it at speed because obviously I'm deputising today. I like to see the opinions captured. The speech bubbles are great when you're looking at testimony. And there's some great metrics there around engagement generally. And you've got your staff survey. So what do you capture formally from families and carers, parents, guardians? Are you able to capture anything formally so you can see a longitudinal study? Because some of those softer metrics are just as important as some of the hard financial facts we've looked at.
Great, thank you. Yes, we have a robust performance framework. So we have a balanced scorecard which details all the metrics on a quarterly basis. The method of gathering from parent carers, wider stakeholders, is through a satisfaction survey that we do annually. Unfortunately, during the pandemic year, we only managed to do the workforce survey that year. But in a normal operating year, we survey all our stakeholders, our valued stakeholders. We call them the Wirral family. So parent carers, volunteers, the people we support. And in the previous year, we get a significant high return from all those stakeholders. But it's reported through a quarterly performance balance scorecard through to our board. Thank you.
Sorry, thanks. So do we have an example of one of those balanced scorecards? I assume they come to committee, do they?
Sorry.
I'd just be keen to see one. If anybody can just say, from my career, that balanced scorecard sounds perfect. It sounds exactly like what we need in some other departments. So I'd be keen just to see an example.
Yeah, I'm happy to provide that. That's no problem.
Anything else? Councillor Nolan?
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
And I'm happy to second it. So we're agreed by a sense. Thank you. Agenda item 9 is Wirral Evolution's non-executive director's salary and service commitment review. And I think, yeah, you're going to leave the room, are you, Mike? Okay. Tony, you're going to present this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report relates to a request from the company seeking consent to increase the remuneration of non-executive director and to also increase the remuneration and number of contracted remunerated days of the non-executive chair of the board. Appended to the report is the business case that Wirral Evolution's put forward, setting out the rationale for that. So I don't intend to go through that in detail here. Hopefully members have had the opportunity to read that. By way of just moving to kind of the recommendations, the report recommends that we decline, the board declines the request for the remuneration increases for the non-exec director and for the non-executive chair, and also declines the request for an increase in contracted remunerated days for the non-executive chair of the company. The reason for those is that the recommendation not to sanction salary reflects the Council national policies in terms of respective remuneration of most public employees currently, but also, as we've heard on the agenda today, the Council's wider concerns regarding the financial situation of the company and the timing of that. Similarly, the recommendation not to accede to the request for additional remunerated days for the non-exec chair is made because it felt that suitable time management strategies can be deployed to achieve what is required without that increase. Furthermore, it's considered that in sanctioning either of those requests, it would be considered insensitive at this time, given the context of proposals to change some of the terms and conditions of the workforce and the ongoing consultation with the workforce. I should say for balance that this request was originally made in November 20, has not been considered to now. Nevertheless, I think the recommendations still stand in terms of the timing and the potential issues and implications associated with a increase in pay at executive director level. Nothing further to add, Chair, but happy to take any questions.
So do I have any questions or comments, Councillor Nolan?
Yes, thanks, Chair. It's a comment, really. I think it's extremely unfortunate timing to bring to the same shareholder board a request for over £1 million of financial assistance, and at the same time ask for increases to be paid to non-exec directors. Granted, it's not a large amount of money, but that's not the point. I can't imagine who thought that that was an appropriate thing to do, I am very much in support of the recommendations, which are that the shareholder board should decline that request, both requests.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I agree in terms of, given the first few agenda items that we've discussed and looked at around financial assistance, and I accept that this first came last November, and it is unfortunate that it's on the same agenda, but the point still stands as well, I feel. Councillor Cameron, did you want to come in, or are you? Okay, so I will move that we accept the recommendations. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Nolan, thank you. We're agreed. Do you want to bring the mic back in? Okay, so we can move on to agenda item 10, which is Wirral Evolution's Governance Workshop and Review. And Vicky, you're going to present this report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Regular informal interaction which takes place between the directors and employees of the company and council officers has identified a number of issues relating to communication, interaction and the governance arrangements between the council and the company, which are detailed in this report. And this report is therefore recommending that the committee agrees and approves a governance workshop being arranged between Wirral Evolutions and the council in order to conduct a comprehensive review of the governance of the company by the council, and then to enable the presentation of an options paper to a future meeting of the shareholder board. So the recommendation is that the shareholder board is recommended to authorise the Director of Law and Governance to convene as soon as is reasonably practicable a governance workshop to be attended by members of the shareholder board, the directors of Wirral Evolutions and appropriate senior officers of the council, including but not limited to the Director of Law and Governance, the Director of Adult Social Care and Public Health and the Director of Resources. The purpose of the workshop is to identify and address areas of concern to the council and Wirral Evolutions Limited regarding existing governance arrangements, and then to request the Director of Law and Governance, following the completion of the governance workshop session or sessions, to bring a report to the next available meeting of the shareholder board, summarising the outcome of the workshop session and presenting a review of the options available for the future governance of the company.
Thanks, Vicky. Do you have any questions or comments? No? I think we're all in agreement that this is a positive move. So I'll propose that we accept that. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Okay, just bear with me. Next, we're on to the final agenda item now, which is number 11, Essentials Director Appointment. Vicky, you're going to present this again. Thank you.
Yes, members will be aware that this report relates to the company Essential, which is a company that is jointly owned by Wirral Council and Cheshire West and Chester Council. At the shareholder board meeting on the 1st of July, approval was given for the appointment of David McNaught as a director of Essential. Unfortunately, Mr McNutt was never actually formally appointed and registered at Companies House as a director on the basis that he's decided to take a sabbatical and won't be available to fulfil those duties. So the recommendation in this report is that the shareholder board withdraws the consent that was given on the 1st of July for David McNaught to be appointed and to approve the appointment of Helen Elizabeth Brackenbury as a Director of Essential in his place, and to authorise the Director of Law and Governance to sign a written company resolution confirming that appointment, and request the Company Secretary of Essential to make the appropriate return to Companies House. Helen Brackenbury is the Director of Children's and Families at Cheshire West and Chester Council.
Fairly straightforward stuff, isn't it? Okay, so happy to move that we accept that. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Okay, so that concludes business of committee today. Thank you everyone for attending.